I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell politicians to give up the rooms. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth.
God, it's me. Can you hear my plea? Feeling like I'm lost in this world, can't you see? Demons creeping in, trying to take control of me. But I'm just trying to find the light, trying to break free. I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. But why do you keep forgetting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feeling like I'm on a leash. Can't find no peace, can't find no peace. Living in hell, can't you hear my plea? I'm suffocating, can't you see? Why you let these false prophets roam free? While the well-run suffer, can't you see? I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Why do you keep targeting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feel like I'm on a leash, can't find no peace.
Hardest battles, strongest soldiers, greatest burden, broadest shoulders, pushing up just like these boulders. See conflict like it's water, so this mercy, take my chalice, seeking grace through all this malice. All of these salty motherfuckers could give out.
Politics and sinners, they all the same.
Got me stuck in this endless game. But I won't give up, won't play the role. Gotta do what's best
for my soul.
I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell these politicians to give up the room. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth. Living wild but truthfully free. God keep on watching over me. Take my pleas and keep the...
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. This morning I want to talk about, that's not showing, is dead kids, deadlocks, and double standards. But before we get into all that, I got independent music, and this morning I got Horror 4 Part 2, Kevin Gates, and with that, we'll be right back right after this.
You waste my time. All is off the hustle, I don't look, respect my. How many times you been leaning on me? Many times. How many times you been sleeping on me? Too many times. How many times you been speaking on me? Too many times. How many times I'ma leave you sorry? Many times. How many times you been leaning on me? Many times. How many times you been sleeping on me? Many times. How many times you been speaking on me? Too many times. How many times I'ma leave you sorry? Too many times. Does anybody hear me? Crying out loud. Crying out loud. Hey, forgive me if I'm seeming a little distant. I put energy in myself. And the heart wants what it wants, and I don't want nobody else. Can't be used, then you're useless. Use me, please, just don't abuse me. The back and forth gets so confusing. The only thing that's really soothing is working out and making music. My whole life been like a movie. The eagle feathers in my head, and eagles flying away. Once I get you back in my arms, I'll never let you go again. How many times you been leaning on me? Many times. How many times you been sleeping on me? Many times. How many times you been speaking on me? Too many times. How many times I'ma leave you sorry? Many times. How many times you been leaning on me? Many times. How many times you been sleeping on me? Many times. How many times you been speaking on me? Too many times. How many times I'ma leave you sorry? Many times. Latest passion, therapeutic art, mix and match in fashion. Disloyal, didn't play their part, they missing in action. Diamonds dance, when I talk they spark, compliment my accent. Begging for a second chance, hit the gas, this fatal attraction. Say they want me dead, that's a bad, tell them get in traffic. You should pray to God that I fall on, but I know if you on else stepping on them, emotions weighing heavy on. Still I'm standing, respect is something earned and never given. I'm out here demanding, tuck away grinding, interstate riding, getaway drivers, bird on the island, say spot tucked inside their blind. No little text, she ain't compliant. Alumni status, we in alliance. Leaving from Bobby, I'm not in alignment. Ain't no secret, people releasing how we achieve a better environment. How many times you been leaning on me? Many times. How many times you been sleeping on me? Many times. How many times you been speaking on me? times I'ma leave you sorry? Many times. How many times you been leaning on me? Many times. How many times you been sleeping on me? Many times. How many times you been speaking on me? Too many times. How many times I'ma leave you sorry? Many times.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing this morning? It's been a tough week. I ain't gonna lie. It's been a real tough last couple of days. We've had so much happen from that viral video in Rochester, Minnesota. You're having not only the P. Diddy trial, Chris Scherr trial is right now. During deliberations last night, they were deadlocked. And there's so much craziness going on. But first I want to get into, this happened Monday night. And I wanted to start off with this, is that a 14-year-old child was killed on the streets of Minneapolis, and in an area that a lot of us have either protested, we walked down there, but it was on Hennepin. And if you know where the Federal Reserve is at, you know it's right there by the bridge, right? It's right there when you go across the bridge. There's a big old, I think it's Pabst, but it's a sign that we all know in Minneapolis, and that it's become an icon. It's become something that we've all in Minneapolis have cherished for years. So with that being said, I want to talk about the teen who was killed in downtown Minneapolis.
Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Julie Nelson. Minneapolis police are actively looking for suspects tonight after a 14-year-old boy was shot and killed right in front of the Federal Reserve in downtown Minneapolis. Shots were heard around 9 o'clock last night near the intersection of 1st and Hennepin. Police say a group of teens had gathered there when a fight broke out. Our Lou Ragoose is there with an update. Lou?
Julie, this neighborhood is in a bustling section of downtown. So much foot traffic with the Hennepin Avenue Bridge right here. A lot of really nice apartments and condos, lots of people living here. And the shooting last night taking place right on the steps leading up to the Federal Reserve Bank. There should be nothing typical about a 14-year-old murdered in the streets. But what played out Monday night, before the sun even set, MPD Chief Brian O'Hara says is sadly becoming more typical in teenage fights when they have access to guns.
So instead of settling a fight with fists and that kind of thing, this has now turned deadly, taking away a life of a teenager.
This is the immediate aftermath outside the Federal Reserve Building where the shooting took place. Chief O'Hara says two groups of teens, about a dozen total, were gathered on each side of the street. He says surveillance video shows the two groups begin fighting. Then a punch is thrown before someone pulls out a gun and fires 2 or 3 shots.
Whenever there's children or young people involved, it's that much more difficult. Teenagers and younger that have access to guns. This is the result of that.
O'Hara says the victim had experienced gun violence before.
This victim was known to police, and it's not the first time he was a victim of a shooting.
When addressing reporters, O'Hara acknowledged the past week in Minneapolis has been very violent. That, after officials pointed out the progress they've made reducing gun violence in the city to pre-pandemic levels. O'Hara says he's still hopeful this recent spike is just a blip.
This has been a bad week, but I do believe, just from what everyone in the community has told me, that they believe things have turned around.
Now, Minneapolis police have not announced any arrests in this latest shooting, although Chief O'Hara sounded extremely confident based on the age and the sheer number of eyewitnesses that they're able to interview. And it's also worth noting that he said they don't believe this shooting is connected in any way to any of the other shootings that took place over the last week. Back to you.
Lou, I don't know if you know this, but I know the shootings with that Native American allegedly gang that just occurred a few days ago. Do they think this might be gang related too, or just teenagers getting in a fight and a gun comes out?
Well, Chief O'Hara hasn't specified whether he believes this is a gang-connected crime. The way that he really characterized it is that everything about it was typical as far as teenage boys getting into a fight, with the key difference being today, those fights are often ended with gunfire.
Wow. You know, that is the difference, I can say, when that I was a kid or when I was a teenager is that we used our hands. You know what I'm saying? I will be honest, is because that's the reason why I got in trouble as a teenager is that, when we felt like we couldn't deal with something that wasn't more than just because I will tell you right now is that my shooting, that was a war. A lot of people don't want to talk about the war in Minneapolis and they don't want to talk about the war over North. But I'm not a person that's afraid to talk about it because there's a lot of my peers, the people that I grew up with that are either, number one, they're not living or they're behind bars for the rest of their life for no reason, for crimes that were committed, but they didn't commit. And that's sad because I've been in, Stillwater with individuals. I've been in Rush City. I've been in Lionel Lakes. And it's sad to see is that we as a society care more about like things that'll divide us. It's not about educating and liberating, right? It's about the way that I see it, because I will tell you right now is that the things that you're seeing in the world, Seattle, over there for the way they're protesting for Gaza and Palestine. You got what's going on in Cincinnati, what's going on in Grand Rapids, Michigan, what's going on in Memphis. These are things because we feel like if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. But come on, I mean, like, really, how long is it going to be out of sight? Because I'm going to tell you right now, it will be in your mind very soon. It will be in your mind very soon. That's for real. It will be in your mind very soon. Very soon, because you will be seeing it. You'll be seeing it. It won't just be Minneapolis and St. Paul. It'll be other areas. It will be other areas. Because how many times have we seen it where this is the second teenager, young man, and to know that the victim was prior had been affected by gun violence, that just showed me that we, like, when, because I know I've seen some comments like, where were the parents at? I've seen a situation this morning, I won't say the names or whatever, but kid got up for school, missed the bus, talking about it never came, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So schools are going to send a taxi. Well, it could turn out that the kid was gone, rode his bike. And it's like, damn, because what can you do as a parent when the system, it's not that the child is bad. The child is just defiant. So he doesn't need JDC, but maybe some behavioral help, maybe some mental health mentoring, maybe some strong men to volunteer and to do things that there is situations where the dad isn't around. So we need to pick it up, because what happened to that village? What happened to that village? Now, and I mean that. Everybody talks about a village, but I don't see it. I don't see it because, first of all, I will say it like this, right? And I don't, people can say whatever, right? We block people because of classism. See, that's the one thing of it is, we're out here fighting for a better community, for a better tomorrow. And see, we have people that, I'm not saying that a lot of these nonprofits and people that don't do good work or, blah, 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 they save some people. Because I would be lying if I said, well, no, all they've ever done is just scam. No, that's not the case. But they make that cycle run. They make that cycle what it is. They make that cycle connect between, here's the crazy thing that people do not want to talk about. Because I will tell you what we've seen this week, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it, is on Saturday, you had people like Bobby Champion was in there in Ward 4. They were protesting at a convention for an endorsement from Marvina Haynes, right? Somebody that You had L. Flowers there. You had, and these are, she's going up against VTOL. So how isn't it? And that's what I'm saying, that like when you disagree with somebody politically, I shouldn't even say politically, because your ideology is different, right? I'm not saying that people shouldn't be who and what they want to be. That's not what I'm saying. We don't need more rights, because at this point we're giving everybody their rights. And that's just like I'd seen a bill last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, down in Florida, talking about Furbies. Like, come on, man. Like, for the fact that people are even having to write bills like that to, I'll call it what it is, fearmonger. When they have to fearmonger that the way that they are, we're in a society that really doesn't care anymore. We're in a society that doesn't really care what we think. They don't care what we do, because they want to control it. As long as they can control it, it's okay, right? And that's what really, really, really trips me out. But one thing that is coming up, right? And I know a lot of people were, oh, it's not going to affect us, not till it gets here. And well, I just want to say it's here. The things that we talk so much about, that, oh, it's not going to get here. It's not going to come, and it'll be, well, it's here. School districts are losing money. And where do you think they're going to get that money from? That's the one crazy part, right? So I'm not saying that people shouldn't have voted for Trump. You voted for who you voted for. Because me saying that, but stick up for your vote. Stand behind your vote. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't agree with something that happened, you should stand up about it. You should speak up about it. Don't just sit here and be like, well, because this happened. Well, this is a consequence of their own actions, of their own behaviors. This is what karma is there for. So with that being said, I want to talk about the Civil Rights Office and public schools being cut.
Who is looking out for your kids? The federal watchdog that Minnesota schools once feared is now a skeleton of itself. Advocates fear mistreatment of young adults could now fall through the cracks. Investigative reporter Ryan Race joins us with how federal cuts are directly impacting Minnesota students.
Yeah, and Kevin, we're talking about the Office for Civil Rights within the U.S. Department of Education. That office still exists, but with nowhere near the reach it once had, and families are already feeling it.
I'm going up the slide.
At 6 years old, Judah James has endless energy. That is constantly keeping his mom on her toes.
Go, Judah!
But earlier this year, Therese James felt compelled to file a federal complaint, alleging a teacher at her son's school treated him differently because he is black and has special needs.
Yeah!
I'm still waiting on the Department of Education to get back to me. Like, I emailed the one that's in Washington, like the head, and I still haven't heard anything from them.
There's a chance she never will. The Office for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Education, which handles these types of complaints, has been cut in half under the Trump administration's efforts to dismantle the entire department. President Trump has long pushed for the oversight of schools to rest with the states, not the federal government. The Office for Civil Rights costs taxpayers about $140 million a year, just a sliver of the $80 billion budget for the entire Department of Education.
We're going to shut it down and shut it down as quickly as possible.
It's like nothing we've ever seen before.
5 Investigates sat down with disability advocates.
Families are feeling scared right now.
The former Minneapolis school superintendent,
who's looking over and holding people accountable,
and a lawyer who started her career at the Federal Civil Rights Office in Chicago.
Personally, it's devastating.
All of them now fear situations like Judah's will go unaddressed.
Yeah!
The The latest available data from 2024 shows OCR took in nearly 23,000 complaints about schools violating civil rights. Data shows in that same year, the office investigated, settled, and closed more than 15,000 around the country. Some are processed within weeks, but others take years to finalize. If you look right now at the agency's website, you'll see it hasn't been updated since January. It shows that right now in Minnesota, there are 130 open and active investigations. Anything from the mistreatment of kids with disabilities to race discrimination.
The vast majority will stay stale for years. Nobody will look at them. Nobody will process them.
Jessica Heiser now works at the nonprofit Disability Law Center. She helps frustrated families negotiate with schools, but it doesn't always work. How often would your office refer cases to the Office for Civil Rights?
We refer about 7 cases a month to the Office for Civil Rights.
7 cases?
7 cases a month, which is a pretty high agency use.
Now they're down to 0 with the new administration.
It really was alarming.
Bernadette Johnson remembers getting this stern letter from the feds as the former Minneapolis school superintendent a decade ago. Investigators found the district was suspending black kids significantly more often than white kids.
It meant to me that we're treating students differently, and it felt like it was unequitable, and it was like dehumanizing in some ways.
Johnson says the experience was a wake-up call for the district, and the discipline procedures that came out of it remain in place today.
Here's what the federal government coming in did. It created this sense of acknowledgement. Everybody knows what's going on in schools, but few people talk about it.
Now James worries she won't be the only one left waiting for answers.
To infinity and beyond! I feel like the family is also going to be affected, because if we're not getting help, like, who are we going to turn to now?
So where else can families turn? Experts I've talked to say you can also try the State Department of Education, but a spokesperson tells me they only handle special education disputes. They don't have jurisdiction over general civil rights complaints, Kevin.
So, Ryan, you said the Office of Civil Rights still exists, so what are they investigating?
Yeah, so right now that office is about half the size as it was, and several regional offices are now closed, including Chicago, which covered Minnesota. We know the U.S. Department of Justice is involved in some cases the administration has prioritized, like keeping boys out of girls' sports. But questions remain about the thousands of other complaints that are still out there. So we'll stay on this.
I had no idea there are that many complaints.
There are a lot every single year.
Okay, that's Ryan Raich from 5 Investigators.
Thanks, Kevin.
They said it would be.
That's crazy. So, Matt, you talked about Timothy Thomas. I'm going to pull something up that talks about, I wasn't going to talk about Rodney hitting, not so much, Rodney and Ryan. I really wanted to stay away. I know that sounds bad. For right now, I wanted to kind of stay away from that. Not because in a bad sense or anything like that. It was just more of, it's better. But here is Timothy Thomas.
Remember it very well. It was a moment in history that our city might not be proud of, but one that sparked change in education. Now, 14 years later, a family member of the man whose death sparked it all is speaking out for the very first time.
Earlier that day, we were kicking it, just chilling right outside his house, and I left him standing on the street.
Okay, cars in the area, copy on that. Chasing a subject with open warrants, approximately 14 of them, male, black, 6 foot, red bandana, eastbound on East 13th Street.
Everybody, like, yeah, bro, they just shot him.
I think he ducked into this little store right here on Vine Street.
Okay, possibly in the store on Vine Street, Timothy Thomas with 14 open warrants.
And it's like, nah, man, like he about to show up at the house anytime, like y'all lying or whatever.
It was around 2 a.m. that Saturday. Officer Stephen Roach shot and killed Timothy Thomas after a foot chase in Over the Rhine. His brother Terry, then 16, remembers it.
It didn't really set in until you seen the lifeless body.
That moment led to this, riots that made headlines around the world.
BBC News in Cincinnati.
Timothy was then the 15th black man to die at the hands of police in 5 years. and the reason the feds got involved.
For the longest time, I had walked around with hate, like, you know what I mean? Not just hate for the police, but I was even hating on Caucasians.
But that faded when
Right.
Terry had kids of his own and realized he needed to turn tragedy into a teaching moment. We were there at Timothy's gravesite for part of the lesson.
Anybody try to bother you first, you put your hands up like, I don't want no trouble.
I think I know what we should do. I think we should just ignore.
I mean, even ignoring them could be a bad thing, but for the most part, I try to show them, like, you know, ain't no running, ain't no, you know, trying to be tougher than them, none of that, because they got the upper hand. They got the badge, they got the gun, and you are just, you know.
And they got law on their side.
For Terry, what happened in Ferguson is a reminder that society still needs to change. And while Cincinnati Police Chief Jeffrey Blackwell has helped our city make great strides, the fight is not over, nor is Terry's dedication to keeping his brother's memory alive.
I always try to go and visit him, say a few words or whatever, pour out a little liquor, you know what I mean? So,
Pour out a little
just to
liquor.
honor that, you know, we ain't forgot about you.
Man, I totally mean, that's the hard part that I don't think people fully like understand is the effects, the afterwards that happens, right? So here is, like I said, here's another story out of Cincinnati that is about Rodney and Ryan. Now you're gonna see this, and I know a lot of people are saying, wait, we had to know sooner or later this was gonna happen. There can only be so much, you know. I've seen different kind of takes on it, so I want to go into a little bit, right? Because it has to like go into what I want to discuss.
I just want my brother to see me. Take a breather. I just want my brother to see me. I just want my brother to see me. My brother can't see me. They did this shit before. They did this shit before.
That's not the way to do it.
They did it before. I got video of them messing with my brother and me before. I ain't do nothing. I just wanted my brother to see me. I ain't do nothing to him. He got that's my family. That's my family in that door.
Come on.
Ray, please. Come on. Ray, please. You and all that. Man, see me 101, man. Now that 40 motherfuckers here on my brother, man. So that was, people don't know, in Cincinnati, a young man was killed. You can barely see it in the body cam footage. They say that he had a gun in his hand. Again, they find that as an excuse to slaughter, right? To execute, to kill, right? To be the judge, the jury, the executor. And it was only going to be a matter of time before. How do you expect mothers or fathers to see their child be killed and nothing happens because of like qualified immunity? Or there had to be some kind of point that there would be a revolution. Everything that Malcolm, Fred, Bobby, Huey, they were talking about is coming into among us. A revolution is coming because it is among us. I will say that. It's coming into phases, but it is coming, because I will tell you right now that with the Chris Scher trial, with the officers in Memphis. You have P. Diddy. And now you have not only Ryan Hinton, you got Rodney, and then you got the whole thing going on in Rochester. You got the whole thing going on in Rochester. The lady using the N-word, and that's causing people to really think about, like, here's what I want people to be, and this is why I stand behind Rodney, right? It's because to me, is that actions hurt, but words we can try to change. This man thought it was an eye for an eye. I shouldn't even say he thinks an eye for an eye, right? That's that, because I won't say it's an excuse to me, right? I think what Rodney did is all 100% okay. I'm not going to sit here and tell somebody that what he did is wrong. That's not my job. I'm not here to be the judge. I'm not here to be an executioner. I'm not here to be a jury. None of that, right? Because I've already walked through that part of my life. I've walked every day I leave the house, I'm judged. This is the one crazy thing, right? Because even when I was talking to my doctor yesterday, I get kind of frustrated because, you know, people go in there and they use the system for like opioids. I don't use none of that shit, right? I don't take no pills, none of that, right? But the things that I'm going through are like that I'm dealing with when it comes to like my stroke or my brain bleed is kind of weird to me in some ways. So I want to, but coming to find out is dealing with the medical and the healthcare is really wild, because I feel like all because you're, number one, you're poor, and then I'm black, that it's like everything that they try to use, I shouldn't say try to use against me, but I really don't know if they'll get me better. I will say that. So I got to fight for myself. And I'm, like I said, I'm grateful for Ashley. I'm grateful for the people that I have around me, because they don't just let any bullshit go. And when I need somebody to speak up for me, they do. But I want to get into, is it illegal to use the N-word? So there's a lawyer in, I don't know where Bruce Rivers out of, but so he gives his view as a lawyer. Is it a crime? So with that being said, here is Bruce Rivers.
We wanted to dig a little bit deeper into this story in Rochester because it is everywhere. You may have seen the video that has now been shared. It's viral. A woman at a playground admitting on video, she's being recorded, that she called a 5-year-old a racial slur. She used the N-word, and she says that this child was going through her diaper bag, and so the person who's recording, you kind of catch it afterwards. You don't catch the sort of initial allegation of the racial slur, but you catch it afterwards, where this person starts to realize what's happening, and he starts recording and asks her several times, "This is what you said. This is what you said," and she does say yes, that she said that, and why she says she said it. So yesterday we saw the community kind of coming out and holding a rally, calling for charges against this woman, and we know that the city of Rochester, the PD rather, has finished their investigation and has forwarded their information on to the city attorney to see if there could be any charges here. So we had just sort of some general questions that, things we can ask just generally around this kind of incident, and we asked Bruce Rivers to join us, and we appreciate his time, criminal defense attorney here in the Metro. Bruce, thank you for carving out some time for us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
You bet. So in this video, again, it starts after this alleged incident, but we hear the woman answering the question of, did you just call him, what I thought you called him? And she says, yes, several times. So given this situation, and I know there's not a lot that the video tells us, but does anything in there warrant charges, just as I'm describing it to you?
Well, we have the First Amendment, obviously, right? And the First Amendment protects, freedom of speech, but not all speech. Like, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, right? But if you say something or do something to arouse alarm in others, basically, which is what we have here, it would be disorderly conduct. So I don't think you can get anything more than a misdemeanor out of this, but certainly disorderly conduct seems to fit.
Okay, and so a disorderly conduct, I think, would be a misdemeanor. Correct me if I'm wrong. What about a hate crime? What's the rule around charging a hate crime?
Generally, hate crime is usually used to enhance a much more serious felony. So, like a homicide that's motivated by racial or ethnic means. But I don't think that would fit here.
And does there have to be a pattern, or can one incident be sort of singled out and said, and people could say, well, this is this one incident, or do you need to see sort of a pattern of this type of behavior?
Or what?
Like for instance, for a hate crime, or the misdemeanor we were talking about as well, disorderly conduct. Would you have to see sort of a pattern of behavior, or could you get someone just
No, you could just have it be one behavioral incident, but it generally is an enhancement on an other underlying felony type case, like the reason behind an assault or the reason behind a murder, for example. They can elevate it, and a lot of times it's done at the federal level.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
This is just bad behavior. It's just absolutely disgusting. And that's why it's really probably more in the disorderly conduct category.
Okay. And so in your mind, as you're just taking a look at the very little that we know here, it doesn't look like it could be escalated to any sort of a criminal charge that you're seeing face value.
Well, yeah, criminal, but a misdemeanor.
Yeah,
not a felony.
Yes, not a felony. Okay.
Which is punishable by 90 days in jail, $1,000 fine, or both.
Okay.
And what a judge could do is judge could make her take some sensitivity training, which seems like she needs pretty bad.
What if, and we know nothing about this particular woman, but in a case like this, what if the person who's being accused or charged has some sort of a mental diagnosis? Would that throw this out?
Not necessarily. That might be a mitigating factor, but it certainly wouldn't be an excuse.
Okay. And because we have a child involved here, we have a 5-year-old on the other end of this. In a case like this, would the child's story, the child's testimony play into this? Would they take that into consideration, or is it just kind of a gray area because the child's so young?
Well, to be a witness, you have to be competent to be a witness. And if you're a 5-year-old child, you're not going to be a competent witness generally. But they don't even need that because it's on video.
How about the family of the child in this case? Do they have any recourse?
Well, certainly you could sue the woman. I don't know the woman would have any money, but a victim's rights are definitely taken into account by the prosecutor. But other than that, it's just kind of a situation where you have somebody who is just rotten and being mean to your child. She's lucky that the parents of this child had more constraint than she did.
Yeah, it's definitely a story that's just touched a nerve clearly across the country. People are, and unfortunately for Rochester, what a horrible moment for Rochester. We know there's so many good people there, but these incidents tend to rise to the top, and it's, I think, a good reminder that this kind of thing happens. It still happens, and we have to be aware of it. But okay, Bruce Rivers, thanks so much for hopping on and just.
So that's crazy. But there's way more to this story, right? So I want to get into another story. Is they had a protest that was called Stop the Hate. And they had it I think it was yesterday or the day before, because I think there's something else going on today. But if you watch this video, you will see that they're trying to make it into something that I feel like it shouldn't be, right? So I want to get more into the story.
Says it has completed its investigation into the video we first showed you last week of a woman calling a boy racial slurs at Roy Sutherland Playground near Soldiers Field Memorial Park. The incident happened a week ago today, and RPD says the findings of the investigation have been submitted to the Rochester City Attorney's Office for review, consideration, and a charging decision. Now, the department says it appreciated the community's patience during this investigation process, but would not give any other details about the potential charges. In response to the video, protesters have been gathering across Rochester today to call for more action to be taken against the woman involved in this viral video. One of those protests happening right now at Soldiers Field Memorial Park near that playground where that video was shot. That's where we find KIMT News 3's Sananda McCall. Sananda, it looks like more people there now here at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, that's right, Cammie. People in Rochester are taking a stand against that viral video that took place here at Roy Sutherland Park Playground just a week ago involving a 5-year-old child and a woman identified as Shiloh Hendricks. Now, today there is a peaceful protest going on hosted by youth organization Journey. It's a protest here, which is not too far from where the incident took place again. Shiloh Hendricks, that is, was heard shouting the N-word several times to the young boy. And this is number 2 of a series of protests calling for action in the Rochester community for Hendricks to be held accountable. Now, while also calling on city leaders to be more proactive in stopping the hate in Rochester. That's actually what this protest is branded as, Stop the Hate protest. Organizers say that people in Rochester have been subjected too long to racial harassment, and many others that are participating in this protest say they're also feeling the frustration, and I'm told the Hendricks incident is only strengthening that conversation.
Kim Sick's house was attacked, nothing was done. There was a racial incident outside of a farm, nothing was done. So it's time for this new county attorney, and I hope they do, realize that hate speech is actually a form of verbal harassment.
Now, the organization Journey is calling for data advocacy. They're trying to poll some of the participants here today with a survey asking how they feel about the state of racism here in Rochester. There is a QR code that they're making available, and soon a link will be available under the story on our website. Now, following the chants this evening, they are going to get together for a barbecue because they want to demonstrate that the community can only come together through coming together. So everybody after this will be sitting down, enjoying food together, and hoping for a change. In Rochester, Sananda McCall, KIMT News 3.
And we can see the folks there behind you, Sananda. Can you give us an estimated head count? How many people are there?
I would probably put it at around 60 people for now.
Okay.
And people are slowly trickling in as well.
Sure. Getting off work and maybe showing up on this nice night in Rochester. All right, Sananda, thank you so much. Sananda will have more for us tonight at 10 o'clock. On Wednesday, the Rochester branch of the NAACP will be hosting a Children Are Sacred Accountability and Justice Town Hall. This will be at the Rochester Civic Theater. Organizers say an official statement from the family of the boy involved will be shared. It will be happening from 4 to 5:30 p.m. Another protest was also held this morning at the Olmsted County Government Center. The participants gathered to ask the city of Rochester and Olmsted County to take civil or criminal action as the viral video continues to capture national attention. The Protect Our Children rally was held at noon. Protesters there said they are calling on Rochester police and the city attorney's office to hold Shiloh Hendricks, the woman who is in the video, accountable, especially after she was able to fundraise somehow more than $670,000 through an online fundraiser.
Racism should not be profited. It should not.
It's clear that there's been lots of incidences like this, and this is their first step. They need to do more. There needs to be more support. There needs to be quicker action.
Be a Bully in the Park raised more than $500,000. We have reached out to the platform hosting the fundraiser. It's called Give, Send, Go. And we're working to set up an interview responding to...
They did one. Give, Send, Go did do an interview. And I agree with it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying what she said is right. It wasn't. But where do we see speech as a crime? You know what I'm saying? Of like, well, fuck you. All of a sudden that's a crime? Because I say nigga all day, every day. I know it's not with the R, and I know a lot of people don't say it with the R. But there is a lot of cases that happen with swastikas. There's a lot of things that happen to Black people of racism, of discrimination, of policies. But we don't, even in schools, just like I talked about earlier about public schools getting rid of civil rights office, you know, especially when they're cutting budgets in half. And already their budgets are already, especially schools, are suffering. A lot of them are in deficits. And that's one thing that you don't hear. You know, there is so much right now that is, especially when it comes to Medicare, when it comes to education, when it comes to daycare. there's a lot of cuts happening. There's a lot of cuts happening. They might not happen today. They might not happen yesterday, but they are happening. If you see every day, there's some kind of cut. There's some kind of cut. I mean, how many education in public schools are being cut when it comes to mental health, when it comes to they want to try to cut the food program. These are all things that if the federal government doesn't want to pay anymore, then we have to cover that. And I know that's the whole crazy thing. We hear these legislators make $51,000 a year to work part-time. And yet most Americans don't make that. So I want to get into, we talked about, the ethics behind it and the policies behind Give, Send, Go. I want to talk about a little bit about their fundraising ethics called into question.
Shiloh went viral, and immediately there was backlash against her.
The woman we've come to know as Shiloh Hendricks, now a familiar face on the Christian crowdfunding site Give, Send, Go. According to her nationwide public appeal for donations, she, quote, called the kid out for what he was. As KTTC reported last week, Rochester police started an investigation after this viral video shows Hendricks directing reported racial slurs toward a child she claims stole something from her child's diaper bag. We are choosing not to play the audio from the clip recorded by a bystander.
Cancellation isn't the way for the narrative to move forward. It's actually
Right.
the diversity of the ideas, even toxic, hard ones that we have to wrestle with. They bring the story to the front, the issue to the front, and then culture can start to wrestle with them in the open.
Jacob Wells co-founded Give, Send, Go in 2015. He says the platform was created to provide support for people, even when their stories are difficult, controversial, or unpopular.
Our mission is to share the hope of Jesus through crowdfunding.
Some might say that what allegedly took place on that playground that day is not reflective of the teachings of Jesus. What is your response to that?
Obviously, Jesus called people to a higher place, to higher living. And the story and the message of Jesus from the very beginning is that humanity is broken and that Jesus is the only perfect solution.
According to Wells, the comment feature has now been disabled from Hendricks's campaign page. Previous public feedback included mentions of white nationalism and other racial undertones.
We saw the features being abused, so we said, hey, we need to shut these comments off.
More than 25,000 people have answered Hendricks's call to protect her family, with monetary gifts now totaling more than $680,000. That figure raises alarms for groups like Rochester's branch of the NAACP, launching its own online fundraiser, far surpassing its original goal. Wells says his company's prayer team has been in touch with Hendricks, and he plans to also personally connect.
Because in these high-profile places, I really want to share with people where we are in the midst of it, so that they recognize who we are.
Meet a digital bank account built for businesses like yours. With American Express Business Checking.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I do think people need to look more into, the crowdfunding, and is it really, for us? Is it for somebody else? Because to me, that does matter. I want to get into how they were deadlocked in the Senate. Now, I don't want to take a long time with this, but I want you to listen to this article.
Members of a Minnesota Senate Ethics Committee took no action to investigate or dismiss a conflict of interest complaint against Senate President Bobby Joe Champion on Monday, deadlocking in a 2-2 vote. The Senate Subcommittee on Ethical Conduct, which has 2 Republican and 2 Democratic members, received a complaint last month from a group of GOP senators against Champion, alleging he violated the chamber's rules when he pushed legislation to provide a grant to a nonprofit he had represented in his private capacity as an attorney. In 2023, Champion introduced legislation to steer $3 million to 21 Days of Peace, a violence prevention nonprofit run by the Reverend Jerry McAfee. Champion represented McAfee and his nonprofit Salem Incorporated in several court cases. Champion also introduced legislation this year to provide another $1 million to 21 Days of Peace. Champion has said he represented McAfee pro bono and did not stand to gain from 21 Days of Peace receiving state funds. Senator Michael Croyne, Arblain, was the chief author of the ethics complaint against Champion and told the subcommittee the situation represented an irreconcilable conflict between the two sides of Senator Champion's legislative and professional life. How could he have maintained an independence of judgment as a legislator when he was the lawyer for the group asking for public funds? Croyne said, "That is impossible." In a statement after the subcommittee hearing, Croyne said it was disappointing that partisanship won out today. Democrats would rather look the other way than acknowledge what is plain to anyone else. Senator Champion's actions, directing funds to a legal client, were wrong, Croyne said. But Champion and his attorney argued he had followed the Minnesota Senate's conflict of interest rules. If we believe those rules should be changed, Champion told the committee, then we have the responsibility then to step up with a bill, but it's unfair to now make a senator responsible for what others believe or perceive should be the changes in the rules. In a statement after the committee vote, Champion said he was happy to have the issue behind him. "I did not introduce or advocate for legislation on which I had a conflict of interest, and I'm grateful that the subcommittee did not find probable cause," Champion said. Champion previously chaired the subcommittee and stepped down from the role last month and sought an advisory opinion on the issue. Members reached a mixed finding last month. Senator Sandy Pappas, DFLSD, Paul, was appointed to replace Champion on the subcommittee and said Monday that the appearance of a conflict of interest can be in the eye of the beholder. In this case, Pappas said, "I just don't see that we can hold Senator Champion to a standard that's not really clear enough in our own rules." Copyright 2025, the Minnesota Star Tribune. Visit startribune.com. Distributed by Tribune Content Agency, LLC.
Interesting. It's 9 times out of 10, everybody, I think most people knew. To be honest, the way that that it sits, I honestly felt like there was nothing that was going to come of it, and that's just normal. I mean, am I mad about it? Yeah, I am, because then I kind of feel like these politics took it to places that it shouldn't have went, and that's what I really want to get into and use the last little half hour for, is to talk about ethics, to talk about, I am taking a class. I got class today. It's Wednesday. I got class Wednesdays and Thursdays. But it is, well, I got doctor's appointments tomorrow, so I won't be going. But it is important to sit here and talk about ethics, and sit here and to talk about conflicts of interest, because not every community is bipartisan. I'm going to be honest. You know, that's the one thing that I will say, is that every community isn't bipartisan. There's a lot of communities that are one-way thinking and one-way thinking only, because once that they got their token nigga, which Minneapolis has plenty of, you know, especially when they lean the DFL way, and maybe they don't even vote. You know, I'm going to be honest. I think maybe because the voting number is so low in Minneapolis, you know what I'm saying, in the Twin Cities period. So how do we even know that they're voting? And that's what people seriously, they need to think about, is what do we get for, as taxpayers, are we getting the bang for our buck? Are we? That's the one thing that I want people to sit here and think about. Are we getting the bang for our buck? Are we getting taxpayers what it's worth? Are we getting what we deserve? That's what I really want people to sit here and to think about. Are we getting what we deserve? What we sure aren't getting what we paid for. We're sure in the hell not getting that. I want to get into, they were talking about the fraud and oversight committees yesterday.
and they did a little press conference. So I want to play some of this, and then I want to play some of the Democrats. But I want to play their little what they feel like they found, and what they feel like came of it, of the Fraud and Oversight Waste Policy Committee.
Nice to see you. Thanks for coming. I'm Representative Kristen Robbins. I'm from 37A, and I'm also the chair of the House Fraud and State Agency Oversight Committee. Yesterday, we had our last committee meeting of the session, so we just kind of wanted to get everyone together and talk about the success the committee had this year and why it's really important for the committee to continue in and become part of the institution of the legislature. So as I've said many times, fraud is not a partisan issue. It's a separation of powers issue. And I think that has been very fruitful for us this session. We've had some good bipartisan work on the joint letter that we sent asking for committees not to do legislatively named grants or earmarks this year. And not only did all of the members of our committee sign that letter, but then the co-chairs of Ways and Means, Chair Torkelson and Chair Stevenson, also sent their own letter. And I think we have seen really significant reductions in earmarks in the different bills that I've seen coming through Ways and Means. So I think that's a big win and good for the culture. It's kind of a reset here at the legislature on that. The other thing I think that we've had great success with, so the three buckets of the committee have been to expose fraud. Sunlight is a really good disinfectant, not only to make legislators more aware of it, but make the public more aware of it. And then secondly, it's to find gaps in statute or tools that agencies need to better manage grants or better manage the programs that they're running. And that came through many weeks of testimony. We heard from all the different agencies, as well as from the Office of Legislative Auditor and the Office of Grants Management. And through those hearings, we were honestly stunned sometimes to hear that they, even though they have the ability to stop payments when there's credible allegation of fraud, they weren't necessarily doing it. They requested help on getting a state kickback statute. They also recommended that we ensure that everyone with grants management responsibilities is required to take the training that OGM offers. So we put together two bills on that. That came late in the session because we heard all the testimony, and then we put together our committee bills. So those we heard informationally yesterday, but a lot of the pieces of that are moving in other bills, and we hope to get that across the finish line. And then the third bucket of what the mission of the committee was is just to be a place where the public learns about it and can help us by identifying fraud. So we created the mnfraud.com portal where people can whistleblow, and we also are working on a bill to strengthen whistleblower protections that I hope makes it over the finish line this year. And in the first week of mnfraud.com, we had 530 submissions that honestly I haven't even had time to go through. That's one of our big projects in the interim, is to get through all those submissions. But we continue as a committee to continue to meet with whistleblowers. We've got another meeting this afternoon, in fact. So the work is going to continue, but I think in those three buckets we've had great success. And I just want to remind everyone that the mission of the committee is really to make sure that taxpayers' hard-earned money is going to the needy, not the greedy. And we cannot lose sight of the fact that vulnerable Minnesotans, this is the business model of fraud we identified, vulnerable Minnesotans are being taken advantage of so people can build a business by defrauding taxpayers that then they use for personal gain. And that is abhorrent to everyone in state government. That is abhorrent to the providers who see it and whistleblow to us. And we want to make sure that needy citizens, vulnerable citizens are not taken advantage of, and that taxpayers' money goes to where it is needed. So that's just a little overview of our work this session. It's been terrific. We are continuing to work to get pieces of different fraud reform bills over the finish line. And with that, I'll turn it over to my Vice Chair, Patty Anderson, and she'll say a few words.
Thank you, Chair Robbins. I'm Patty Anderson, Delwood, District 33A. Over the last year, even before the session started, it's become really apparent that we need to do more in regards to oversight within state agencies. And as much as the agency staff, we're talking about all the vendors, and I call vendors, whether they're nonprofit, whether they're for-profit companies, but they're people that provide or are supposedly providing services to our citizens, and we're paying them with tax dollars. But it's become obvious that the structure that existed, where you have some OIGs, Office of Inspector Generals, small ones within these departments, hasn't worked. It hasn't caught the fraud. When they do see it, they haven't done enough. They've sent stuff to BCA. I can tell you there were just very few cases that the BCA took, that DHS sent over the last couple of years. And so fraud's been allowed to just get larger and larger and larger. Starting at the beginning of the session, there's been a bipartisan group, as you're aware, that's been working on an Office of Inspector General statewide bill. That bill, I think you're going to see. We're going to get this passed. The Senate, we've been working with Senator Gustafson, Senator Cruin, and others over in the Senate and here in the House. It's been a bipartisan group, which includes Representative Cleavorn and Norris on the Democrat side. The House bill right now has been kind of sitting in State Gov. It's sitting there until we finish the final negotiations. The Senate bill has been the bill that's been moving, and that's going to be on the floor, I think, tomorrow or Thursday. It's going through Finance. It's close. It's not perfect. It's not what we will probably pass out of the House, but we're close enough with a lot of the language that I think in the end we're going to have a bill. We're going to set up a statewide Office of Inspector General that has full investigatory authority, that has full, essentially what we call police powers. And that's really, really important for the future of the state of Minnesota. So that's what I'll be spending the last 2 weeks of session trying to get done and get accomplished for the citizens of Minnesota. You probably saw the governor said that if we can get that done, he'll sign it. That's good news. And so we're going to get that done. I want to turn this over to another member of the Fraud Committee, Representative Walter Hudson, who's going to say a few words. Thanks.
Come on, Robert. Planning Commission.
Good morning. My name is Representative Walter Hudson. I represent District 30A. That's the St. Michael and Albertville area and surrounding communities. So I want to share kind of my collective experience over these many weeks of these different hearings that we've had, where we've had state agencies come in and explain their process of how they manage grants. And it's been a fascinating experience because it's tough to sift through the sand of their presentation, which of course is going to be presented in a light that makes them look well. You would expect them to do that, to sift through that and to try to find where the indications of problems are. And one of the overriding themes that I've noticed is that there seems to be a focus on bureaucratic process for the sake of maintaining the appearance of compliance with expectations, rather than ensuring that the actual intent of that bureaucratic process is manifest in the real world. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get grant recipients, these folks who we've entrusted with public dollars to provide services to Minnesotans, to actually be on the up and up, to run their operations in a competent manner, in a professional manner, with integrity, where they're actually delivering the services. The impact of the grant management from the state agencies should be to affect that, but it hasn't been. And I'll give you a specific example. This one really stood out to me. So we had a hearing where we got bogged down in talking about conflict of interest, the concept of conflict of interest. And it became very clear in the way that the agency was talking about that their focus was on obtaining a sheet of paper from the grant recipient that says there's no conflict of interest. So one of the OLA findings was that this sheet of paper is not being collected properly by the state agencies. But the sheet of paper is just an attestation that there's no conflict of interest. There's no process that actually determines whether or not there's one. And so the focus is on, let's get the sheet of paper that tells us there's no problem, make sure it gets put in the right file, and all is well with the world. And obviously we know that's not how things work. The other thing that's very evident from the hearings that we had, particularly towards the end here of the session, is that there is, intentionally or not, a culture of fraud that has been fostered by the current administration. And that became very clear when we addressed Attorney General Keith Ellison and had him come in to testify regarding the disclosed audio that has now been heard by virtually everyone at this point, where he's in a conversation with folks who would later be indicted in the Feeding Our Future scandal And there's been a lot of interesting tap dancing around that about, campaign contributions and where did this take place and who was he talking to and when. But all of that is kind of beside the point. The point of that revelation is in the content of what the Attorney General said. What he said was, we are in a battle with state agencies. He said, we are going to fight these people in reference to the state agencies.
That he represents.
The state agencies are his client. If you hired a lawyer and somebody sued you, and your lawyer met with them without you and trash talked you and talked about how he was fighting you, his client, that lawyer would be disbarred, and properly so. That is irrefutable. That happened, regardless of when and where and with who. We also heard in that conversation that Governor Walz agrees with me, Keith Ellison said, that this piddly stuff shouldn't prevent people from their grant distributions and staying in business. So when you look at the chain of relationships here, you've got the taxpayer who provides the resources. You've got the state agencies who administer the grants and manage them. You've got the grant recipient, and then you've got the people who are actually receiving the services. Of those four, the focus of Keith Ellison, and apparently, according to him, Tim Walz as well, was the grant recipient. We got to keep them in business. We got to keep business going. And so that raises the question of, is the culture of this administration one that actually cares about ensuring that the taxpayers' money gets spent in the way the legislature intended? Or is the focus on ensuring that people stay in business in order to benefit themselves? I'll turn it over to Jim Nash.
Well, good morning. I'm Representative Jim Nash from 48A. I am not a member of the committee, but I am the chair on the Republican side of State Government Finance. And as you've heard a number of times from us, really since before we started session, focusing on waste, fraud, and abuse was going to be something that all committees were going to be doing. State Government Finance is one in particular. And if you'll remember, we had a press conference where I detailed my House File 3 that we sort of called fraud notes. And I wanted to let you know, if you haven't read every word of the State Government Finance bill, and I'm sure you all have, that it is in the bill in totality. So that is completely in the bill. There will be 4 full-time OLAs once that bill gets signed into law. And there will be some other fraud package pieces from Representative Davis that are in there. There will be a lot of focus on, in that particular bill, on doing the waste, fraud, and abuse. And to pick up on what Representative Hudson just said, that self-attestation that he mentioned, that's part of what House File 3 will also be driving, is a proactive approach from the OLA to go in and say, based on the recommendations that we have made over time, have you actually implemented these best practices into your day-to-day operations? So now, rather than just wait and have a bureaucracy say, yep, we did that, check the box, the OLA is going to be actually going forward and making sure that that's done. And I will admit that I came to this a little bit late. I left the floor, so I wanted to make sure that I had some notes with me, and this is the very simple note. It's right here. It says, fraud equals bad. And that's what I think that all of us have been focusing on from the very beginning of this session. Fraud is bad. And as you heard Chair Robbins say from the very beginning, this is not just fraud that doesn't impact anybody. It impacts people who, in good faith, pay their taxes to the state of Minnesota, expecting that something good will come out of them.
Right.
And what we have seen is something entirely to the contrary. So
Different.
from my presentation, if you take away nothing other than fraud is bad, that's what we're focusing on. And the State Government Finance Bill has a lot of funding that will be going to combating waste, fraud, and abuse.
Now, I want to get into, they want for like 20 more minutes. I want to get into the DFL's press conference because they did one as well for the findings of the fraud on about a half hour of the both of them were. So I want to play about 15 minutes of this one.
I represent the southwest part of St. Paul, and I'm the DFL lead on the Fraud Prevention and State Agency Oversight Committee. I also serve as a prosecutor outside the legislature. I appreciate everybody being here. I had the chance to look at the press conference that occurred a couple hours ago from our colleagues, several of them serving on that committee, and have a few thoughts. Wanted to recognize that we have a number of folks here who are authors of provisions that are in fact moving in our various budget bills to address fraud, both fraud on public programs and fraud more broadly. We know that fraud is an issue that is expanding throughout our economy, our society. There are people who are taking advantage of vulnerable people. They're doing so of people who are benefiting from public programs and need the benefit of those programs, and on consumers and businesses and government more broadly. And we want to continue to take action against that fraud. There's a handout that we will be getting to you if we haven't already. That looks at many of the progress, much of the progress that was made in the 2023-2024 legislative session that built on progress in prior sessions, and then proud to say that we're taking action this session as well. I'll have some more thoughts at the end about how the Fraud Prevention and State Agency Oversight Committee ties into the proposals and the provisions that are moving. I will say that very few of them have actually moved through that committee, and which has been a challenge for those of us on that committee, but I'm glad that in many other committees that there's been a lot of important work that's been done. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the pieces that are moving through, and then again at the end we'll circle back to talking further about the committee. I'm going to ask Representative Steve Elkins to talk about a couple pieces, and then Representative Emma Greenman. We're the three who are the DFL members of the Fraud Prevention Committee. Representative Elkins.
Thank you. A member of the committee, and sponsored one of the provisions that is being carried in the larger bills related to data sharing. So one of the problems that we need to solve is that, for example, if we want authoritative income and employment data, we would need to go to DEED. If you need source of truth for births and deaths, we would need to go to the Department of Health for that kind of information. So behind the scenes, Minute, through its Technical Advisory Commission and Data Sharing Subcommittee, is already exploring, has been for several months now, how we would go about making it easier to share data across agencies to do fraud detection and prevention activities. That work will be ongoing and is supported by legislation that we're poised to pass this year as well.
Good. Mr. Green?
And I am Representative Emma Greenman. I represent South Minneapolis in the House. And I think to restate what Co-Chair Pinto said is we have started every Monday morning for 3 months talking about what we were hoping to talk about. What we wanted to talk about was how do we protect vulnerable people, how do we protect the services that they rely on from fraudsters who will take advantage of that. And unfortunately, for week after week, what we got was what felt like a very political piece and also not very useful, because the last hearing we had was about, we actually got the Medicaid control unit who came in. I heard them in public safety 2 months ago, and they actually started to talk about the details of the fraud and the business model of fraud that we were trying to prevent. Unfortunately, it was after most of our committees had written their bills with really good, important things in them. And that's the language that we wanted to be talking about. The last thing I'll say is, in public safety, I heard Superintendent Drew Evans say that fraud is a problem across our economy. It's raised 25% in the last year, just consumer fraud. And so the fact that we're not, in that committee, we had not had one conversation about fraud that's going after our seniors, fraud that's going after our veterans, fraud that's going after our small businesses, to me means we weren't really talking about fraud at all. It was an attack on the governor. It was an attack on our agencies that provide these services. And as we saw a couple weeks ago, it's an attack on the Attorney General's office that's actually doing amazing work to fight fraud and abuse that's aimed after our seniors.
Make it about politics, Emma.
And our government services that are providing real benefit and important benefit to people. And so that's, I think I'll turn it back over to
Pinto. Yeah. And I'll note we have Chair Mahmoud Noor from the Human Services Committee. Just yesterday, we passed Human Services Finance and Policy bills that contained a number of provisions that fight fraud. We can certainly have you direct questions to him if you're interested. Chair Jenny Cleavorn from our State Government Committee, the budget bill that she passed contained a number of provisions as well. My own committee in the jobs area contains language to fight misclassification investigation. Representative Greenman has led on that. That's a form of fraud not only on employees and workers, on fellow businesses and on government as well. Chair Khadija Watoon from the Children and Families Committee. What I want to emphasize is that these are a series of provisions, and I should note actually Representative Matt Norris here as well, who worked on proposal from the Attorney General relating to Medicaid fraud. These are all provisions that have been advanced forward, very often with DFL authorship, of course, ultimately end up getting bipartisan support, which is the nature of our tied House. I'm the author of the bill from the governor with a comprehensive anti-fraud package. These are all provisions moving forward. I will note, having listened to the press conference earlier, there were 3 bills that in the course of the 10 weeks that we heard, all informationally, the only one of those bills moving forward at all is the governor's anti-fraud package, pieces of that moving forward as I referenced. There were 2 bills we heard yesterday that will not move forward, did not receive a hearing. And so it's interesting, as I was preparing for this and to be talking to you and educating myself about the different pieces, it's hard to track things. It's funny, service on the Fraud Prevention Committee did not inform somebody very well about the actual anti-fraud provisions that are moving on the various bills because they didn't end up coming in front of our committee. Appreciate many of the conversations that we had and happy to get into that. But I do want to note that the work that's being done to fight fraud is work that's been happening for a number of years. It's continuing to happen this session, and it's very much the people standing behind me and others as well who've been leading on a lot of that work in collaboration with others as well. I think that we probably for now have addressed what we wanted to in terms of initial remarks. Again, there's folks here who can answer questions and happy to talk with you.
What about the partisanship or bipartisanship? Obviously, it was the only House committee that Republicans retained a majority on. How did you feel like it was run?
Yeah, I think certainly the aspects of, how the actual process and the hearings and all worked, I think reasonably fair. I will note that the one time that we really learned about or received information that somebody might think would really educate about the detail of what fraud is going on, it was a group, the Center of the American Experiment, that presented, right-wing a group that had somebody who presented who indicated that it really wasn't based on research that he had done. That obviously does not say good things. I'll note also that just before the committee met, there was a letter that our colleagues sent. I'm going to turn to Representative Greenman to discuss that.
So to the point about how we started this committee, it wasn't just the makeup. It was that before we even met, we saw this letter that Republican leadership, along with co-chair or Chair Robbins, sent to Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate Governor Walz. Now, we know about this president, that he is famous for going after his political enemies. The idea that the Republican leadership would say, let's have a serious conversation about this, entering in to the committee while sending a letter to Attorney General Bondi to investigate Trump's political enemy just doesn't start with a conversation about what we're talking about is actually protecting taxpayers, government services, and the people who rely on them. What this says is this is a political project from the beginning, and I felt, before we stepped one foot into the building.
And I'll just, one other note. I've had very constructive conversation with Chair Robbins. You'll note she had referenced a letter that was sent jointly by all members of the committee. That was very constructive, and I certainly, I guess it's my nature to hope and expect that we can continue to work to a productive place. Certainly many of the anti-fraud provisions that I referenced have bipartisan support. But at this point in the work the committee's done, I don't know that there's a lot that we can point to that the committee has identified thus far in terms of accomplishments.
So this is a committee that you would continue if you had the choice?
Well, I think we want to see. What I'll say is the work of the legislature, the work of the House, is so much done in committees that ultimately we present proposals in the form of bills, right? And so I think it was not clear at the very beginning: is this a committee that's going to be actually doing that? How's that going to work? I would say we're all concerned about making sure that public funds are used in good ways. But as far as this particular
You know what? I'm going to stop it there because we have all seen, especially as somebody who went up to the GOP before, it was actually in 2023. It was after the session. I had met Walter and Pam at the state capitol. I had a meeting and I showed them basically how a lot of, I will say how fraud and waste that was happening in Minneapolis. And you could connect it
two different political parties, right? You can dip it, I shouldn't say really political parties, but you could attach it to certain people because of either their last name or they were senators or they were, you know, like I said, some people had reverends, pastors, but it all come to find out is that they were all paid by the same person. Some people were using it fraudulently, and some people were wasteful with it. And I will say, I'm like, you know, that's the one thing that bugged me with when it came to this ethics complaint with Bobby, is that it was deadlocked or whatever. But the part that bothers me is like we never. Okay, so there was an accusation thrown, just like what happened with Nicole Mitchell, what happened with the old complaint with Bobby Champion and Jeff Hayden. We never really get no answers because I feel like because of politics and because of right now we're in, and this is the thing that's crazy to me, right, is we see that we're in a budget crisis. We see that we need both parties, but they can't waver. And because here's the thing, Democrats are fighting right now to feed all kids. They're for immigrants, and we're doing a lot of things that they want to get rid of. That's what people don't want to talk about. And who's being left behind? Who's being left behind? Because I will tell you like this, is that everybody wants to go out here and say that Black Lives Matter, but Black lives are profitable. It's not about making a change. It's about, because I will tell you right now, as I was I had seen something come up on True North Minneapolis about an hour ago, right? And it's about the and some of this shit makes me sad, man. I'm gonna be 100% honest, because I read that post and I felt for the 14-year-old's parents, for the mother. She's a struggling mother. She was just trying to make ends meet, trying to feed her kids and herself, keep a roof. And it makes me, I know I don't want to be hard on the parents, but it's like, when are we actually, because I will tell you like this, the shooting happened at Monday night at 9 o'clock. The street lights were coming on. They were already on. So why isn't our kids in the house? See, we've gotten rid of a code. We've got rid of an ethic, because I will tell you like this, is that a lot of individuals in our communities don't know the difference between right and wrong because there's such a thin line. And it all comes down to either politics, it comes down to classism, it comes down to racism. And when you point that out, people get mad at you. They'll call you everything in the book. They'll threaten you. That's the whole thing about this. Like, we've made this whole Shiloh Hendricks and Shamarki Omar and the 5-year-old, we've made this more to something that it shouldn't be. We've made it where two people were able to, a 5-year-old and a woman, she's got over 700 and she's almost at $800,000. Well, in almost a little over a week, she's at $800,000. And the other, when they stopped it, it was at 341, I think. 341,000. And he only had a goal of 250. So when are we don't see nothing change. We see, that's the one crazy thing, because I seen Mayor Norton Monday. She went up and protested at the city hall. And it's like, wait, you're the mayor. You can make them changes. That's what I don't understand, is like, all y'all are buddies. So why would you make change? Because it's not going to put money in your pocket. So if there isn't chaos, we don't have an issue. If we get rid of the gun violence, if we get rid of the abstaining from school, if we actually made sure that kids had a education, if we made sure that we were teaching kids the right things, and we had a difference of right and wrong, and it doesn't go by either white, it doesn't go by race, it doesn't go by your sex, it doesn't see any of that. But we're starting to really see that all that matters. All that matters, because I will tell you right now, this is my biggest beef with Rochester, Minnesota right now. That boy was not black. I don't care what none of y'all say. He was not black. He was a black immigrant. And everybody's asking about where the parents are, why they didn't make up. Because first of all, they didn't understand what nigger was. They didn't understand that what the boy was being called was racist. They didn't understand that. Because in their eyes, they're Somalian. They've only been over here a little bit over, I think it was either a year or under. But they were just fresh. I'm not going to say out the boat. But they were fresh here. Fresh here. So that's the one thing is everybody wants to come out and make money off of this, but we haven't heard from the parents. We haven't heard from the child. Because I will say like this, the dude that took the video, he did another one over the weekend. And that's why I say this is all about money. Right? It's all about money. Because I will tell you like this, one word. Because I will tell you like this, it's so fucked up that people look for fame and clout in their little 15 minutes of fame. They don't think about the repercussions from their actions. They don't understand that. I'm gonna tell you like this: when that man picked up the phone and started recording that lady saying the nigger word and accusing her, everybody was like, "Oh yeah, you did a good job," but he wasn't thinking about his past. He wasn't thinking about his past. Right? And if KTTC did their homework or KIMT or ABC6, whatever they want to call their names, or Post Bulletin, who keeps on doing interviews with this young man, ask this of why was the state had to cancel so many trials because the BCA wasn't testing the red kit? Why isn't that being asked since we're so adamant about the cases that the charges were dismissed? Why don't we find out why it was dismissed? Because all it says is in the interest of justice. Doesn't say that he didn't commit the crime. Because if you're going to say this is that we believe he did it, but because of our wrongs, we can't prove it. Because we fucked up. Is that the interest of justice? Like it leaves an open door there, Blair. A big open door, and nobody really wants to talk about it. There's so much, but then yet we see that maybe he had a gun and he's dead. Ryan Hinton. You know, I've seen people, young men that die with spit masks over their face in Rochester, New York. Daniel Prude. I've seen people go into Mayo Clinic in Rochester for a sprained ankle, or they were looking for help and then actually end up dying in there, but they were black. They were black. Nobody's going to bat for them. There's been people that have died in Olmsted County Jail. There's been people that have been abused by the Rochester Police Department that are black. We don't do nothing. That's like when I played the earlier interview, the guy said that, you know, there was the bridge incident. There was, you know, the house incident. I think he said farm, but I think it was, I don't know what she actually lives on. I don't know I know it's a pretty big lot. So it really honestly makes you wonder. Like, why now? Because you've seen a viral video? Because here's the one thing that I honestly want people to think about is that the only reason why we know about a racial video is because white people didn't like it. White people didn't like it because they thought it was disgraceful. They thought it was hateful. Right? And then you have the other, that's what I don't see nothing wrong with the give, send, goes. I don't, everybody's got one. That's the whole thing of it is I seen that somebody posted that they GoFundMe apologized to the Cincinnati Sheriff's Office. Who cares? This is so are people just supposed to sit there and take it and not? Here's the thing of it is, y'all work for these people, but don't call them out. So how are you not supposed to be at least aiding and abetting or complicit to the bullshit because you're silent or you're not doing anything, or you tell the people you're doing something but you're not actually doing anything? That's what's wild to me. And we see that over and over again, because I will tell you like this, is that even during the ethics committee, is that, oh, Bobby said, well, I do this for a lot of people in my community. No, you don't. Do you know how hard it is to get a meeting with this nigga? If you don't agree with Bobby or Shamika or Taylor, If you don't have the same views, they don't want to talk to you because politics is a motherfucking real thing right now. If y'all, I know y'all don't want to believe me, but it really is because they want to make sure that you keep on asking the government, Big Brother, for a handout. Instead of trying to figure out ways of trying to get it on your own, they want you to be there with your hand out so they can control you. That's what this is about. It's about you putting out your hand so they can control you. But again, a lot of people don't want to see that because we think that the few things that they do good, but there's actually a lot of bad behind that. There is a lot of bad behind that. I shouldn't. This is Grand Rapids, Michigan. So if you haven't heard about Patrick Layola, they are deliberating. I know I talked about that earlier in the episode, is that, but this is the thing of it is that protesters were getting out of hand. And people were arrested. Now, Jimmy Barwin was arrested and he hasn't been released. He had to remain for court. And that's dangerous. People don't understand is that people die from that bullshit. You know what I'm saying? All because of somebody else's how they feel or whatever. But look, you see the Blue Lives Matter. And so here you go in Grand Rapids, Michigan. A lot of things happening. A lot of things happening. Get them out of there. There's a lot of popos. I will tell you that. There's a lot of police. I want to take you out to, before I get up out of here, I want to take you out to Seattle, Washington. And there is things out there that are going on that, do you know? Do you not know? So over 1 million in damages so far at the University of Washington.
The campus of the University of Washington.
A new engineering building was trashed on Monday night following a pro-Palestinian protest that ended with 31 arrests. King 5's Drew Andre is on campus this morning. Drew, you were there yesterday where we saw furniture still, blocking the doors of that engineering building. What's it like there this morning?
Well, Mimi, from the outside, everything looks totally back to normal. All that chalk that was on the ground and furniture outside has been put away and cleaned up. But a much different story on the inside. The university estimates that there's more than $1 million in damage to just the equipment alone. This is the interdisciplinary engineering building that has only been open for just a few weeks at this point. Let's show you some of that damage inside. Our cameras went inside yesterday. You could see some of that busted glass. There's spray painted walls. A lot of brand new equipment that was just trashed. Some of it still even in bubble wrap because this building is so new, and doors glued shut too. Now the university says the building cost $150 million to construct. They received a $10 million donation from Boeing. It's why this building was specifically targeted. Now, the protest was led by a student group called Super UW. Among their demands were that UW cut ties with Boeing over its work with the Israeli military. But engineering students feel like they got caught in the crosshairs.
Right.
Vandalism against engineering buildings is an attack against engineering students. So we just want to study about technologies that can make this world a better place.
And the fallout from the protests, the prosecutor's office says 31 people were arrested. Only 5 cases went before a judge on Tuesday, with more to follow. Now, the people arrested are accused of criminal trespass, which is a misdemeanor.
It was lit.
No one has been officially
I will
charged
tell you this,
yet
they were
at this point.
they were flipping out
26
in
of
Seattle.
those people that were arrested are scheduled to be in court today. Now, we still don't know how many of those people are students, but we did hear from the university that says there will be consequences for students that were involved, potentially suspensions.
Damn. So there is a lot of things that are going to happen in America, and people should be paying attention. They should be understanding what's going on and how does it affect them. When will it affect them? Because others will happen right away, and some of us it won't be. We won't see it right away, and some of us, you know, if you live in bigger communities, bigger cities, you will see it. But there's some of us that live in rural areas where there isn't a lot of population, so we're not going to see it. So I talked about, you know, a 14-year-old was killed in Minneapolis by the Federal Reserve on Hennepin. We talked about the Civil Rights Office in public schools being cut in half. So it's going to make it harder for the civil rights complaints. And now I haven't really looked at Amber's. I know that she got one back about, you know, her daughter. And again, there's still things that are going on in the Red Wing nobody wants to talk about, because it honestly hasn't gone away since Wigger days. You know, when you look at what happened during that and the accountability and the responsibility that was taken, it was a slap on the wrist. There wasn't any kind of justice in that but a payment. The same thing with Shakira. You know what I'm saying? It was the same thing. So we really need to have those conversations, just like with, you know, in Rochester, you're having immigrants, Africans say that, well, we're feeling some type of way. Well, we feel some type of way for y'all sitting here gumming to the front while our people are still suffering, but you're sitting here worried about your people. So I'm going to sit here worried about my culture, my people. So with that being said, man, I won't be back tomorrow. I got another doctor's appointment. So that's what I'm going to do. I got doctor's appointments tomorrow and Monday. I think Monday. So I'm definitely will be kind of, what I'm going to do is hold off until late next week, probably like Tuesday, until stepping into a new season of the Urban Conservative. So with that being said, I want y'all to win or fail, freedom or jail, heaven or hell, wish me well. And here is Don Tripp, Sugar Honey, Iced Tea. That being said, I'll see y'all tomorrow. I'll see y'all Friday.
Somebody help me, please. Took one look at you and felt my heart skip a beat. Say if love is war, I promise I'll never retreat. Enough kids to start an army, let's be all we can be. Girl, look at you, you so fine and petite. I might just have you for dinner, darling, bon appetit. Better yet, dessert, you a snack, you a treat. Girl, you more than I deserve, and I want seconds and third. Every girl in the world don't mean a damn thing to me. Baby, you the sugar, honey, iced tea. I might never leave your presence, ain't no better place to be. Baby, you the sugar, honey, iced tea. I'm the best you ever find, but enough about me. Baby, you the sugar, honey, iced tea. Shawty, I know I got options, you the only one I need. Baby, you the sugar, honey, iced tea. Baby, bring me that just as soon as you get it wet. If I put it to sleep, now it's dirty cat nap. In your mirror taking selfies, trying to make that ass fat. If my name ever come up, you probably have a flashback. I'm a freak, I'm a creep. If she mine, it's for me. I'm your #1 fan, I'm the only man you need. I come through and make you fold, and I never leave a crease. Fuck whoever disagree, I need no vision to